Have you ever felt like you're living a life that's not truly your own, just going through the motions? What if the life you're working towards is a societal construct instead of what makes you happy? What if the very foundations of your pursuit of happiness are built on a lie? Today, we'll explore Albert Camus's philosophy of absurdism and how it reveals the illusion inherent in society's promise of fulfillment. That feeling of living a life that's not truly your own is more common than you might think. From a young age, we're often told what a successful and happy life should look like. A stable career, a house with a white picket fence, marriage too. 5 kids and the latest gadgets. Society whispers these expectations into our ears, creating a mold that many feel pressured to fit, regardless of their individual values or desires. This relentless pressure to conform can lead to a profound existential anxiety, a nagging feeling that something is fundamentally wrong, that you're chasing a mirage. Think about the modern rat race, the endless pursuit of keeping up with the Joneses, where individuals sacrifice their time, energy, and passions in a desperate attempt to validate their worth through external achievements. This often leaves people feeling empty, disconnected, and trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. Albert Camus, a brilliant philosopher and writer, grappled with these very questions in the aftermath of World War II, a time of immense uncertainty and disillusionment. Witnessing the collapse of traditional values and the absurdity of human conflict, Camus developed his philosophy of absurdism. Absurdism suggests that there is a fundamental conflict between humanity's innate desire for meaning and the universe's apparent lack of it. Camus observed the human tendency to seek purpose in a world devoid of inherent meaning, and this observation became a cornerstone of his philosophy. His exploration into this conflict provides a framework for understanding and navigating the tension between societal expectations and individual meaning, guiding us toward a more authentic existence. The core problem lies in this inherent human need for meaning and purpose, a need that clashes violently with a universe that appears indifferent and ultimately meaningless. This conflict can manifest as feelings of alienation, despair, and a pervasive existential angst. It's the sense that no matter what you do, it will ultimately be insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But here's the twist. This video isn't about wallowing in nihilism or succumbing to despair. It's about discovering the freedom and the unexpected joy that can be found in a world without inherent meaning, as seen through the lens of Camus's absurdism. By the end of this exploration, you'll gain a new perspective on life's challenges, not as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities for self-discovery and growth. You'll acquire a philosophical framework for finding purpose and joy, even in a world that seems to lack it inherently. More importantly, you'll receive actionable insights for embracing uncertainty, cultivating your personal values, and living a more authentic and fulfilling life, free from the constraints of societal expectations. We'll even uncover the secret to becoming an absurd hero, someone who rebels against the absurd, embraces their freedom, and lives passionately. The core message is this: you don't need external meaning to create a meaningful life. Stay with me, as the most profound insight regarding this philosophy is yet to come. You might be thinking, this all sounds very abstract and philosophical. How does it apply to my everyday life? That's a completely valid question, and it's okay to feel a bit skeptical or even overwhelmed when questioning such deeply held beliefs about the nature of reality and purpose. It's natural to feel lost when questioning your life's purpose, and many people experience similar feelings of alienation or disconnect from societal expectations. Rest assured, this video isn't intended to provide easy answers or simple solutions. Instead, it's an invitation to explore a different way of thinking, to challenge your assumptions, and to embrace the inherent uncertainty of life with courage and authenticity. So let's delve deeper into the heart of absurdism and discover how it can transform your perspective on life, turning what seems like a curse into a source of profound liberation. So, how can we grasp absurdism to truly understand this lie we've been talking about? It's essential to realize that Camus's absurdism isn't just another form of nihilism, a descent into simple meaninglessness, or a justification for apathy. It's not about saying that nothing matters and giving up. Absurdism, in its essence, is a very specific philosophical position that grapples with the human condition, acknowledging the inherent tension between our innate desire for meaning and order and the cold, indifferent reality of the universe. This is a very important distinction to make, because mistaking absurdism for nihilism often prevents people from seeing its true potential as a framework for living a more authentic life. At its core, absurdism rests on three key components. First, there's the human desire for meaning, a deep-seated longing to find purpose, order, and clarity in our lives. We crave understanding, we seek explanations, and we yearn for a sense of belonging in a world that often feels chaotic and confusing. Second, we have the universe's indifference, the stark reality that the cosmos doesn't care about our desires, our struggles, or our existence. It operates according to its own laws, without regard for human concerns or aspirations. And third, we have the resulting clash between the two, the inevitable collision between our yearning for meaning and the universe's silence. This clash, this constant tension, is what Camus termed the absurd. It's not a characteristic of the universe itself, nor is it a flaw in human nature. It's the space between the two, the friction that arises from their irreconcilable differences. Think of it like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. The frustration, the impossibility, that's the absurd. To truly understand absurdism, we must turn to the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus, in Greek mythology, was condemned by the gods to an eternity of pushing a boulder up a mountain, only to have it roll back down each time he neared the summit. This endless, repetitive task, devoid of any real progress or accomplishment, perfectly encapsulates the absurd. Camus saw Sisyphus's situation as a metaphor for the human condition. We, too, often find ourselves engaged in tasks that seem pointless, repetitive, and ultimately meaningless. Think about the daily grind of commuting to a job you dislike, the endless cycle of paying bills, or the pursuit of material possessions that never truly satisfy. These can all feel like our own personal Sisyphean tasks, but here's where Camus's genius shines. The absurdity isn't just Sisyphus's task, but his awareness of its pointlessness. He knows that the boulder will always roll back down, yet he continues to push it day after day for all eternity. This awareness, this conscious recognition of the absurd, is what separates Sisyphus from a mindless automaton. It is precisely in this awareness that Sisyphus finds his freedom. Does this resonate with you? Do you see any Sisyphus tasks in your daily life? Are there aspects of your routine, your work, or your relationships that feel repetitive, pointless, and ultimately unfulfilling? Identifying these tasks is the first step towards reclaiming your own sense of meaning and purpose. And if life is absurd, does that mean there's no point in doing anything? Stay with me, because the societal expectations of life are the lie we were talking about, and you don't want to miss it. But if life is absurd, and we are all potentially Sisyphus, endlessly pushing boulders uphill, does that mean there's no point in doing anything? This is where the societal lie comes into play. Society often provides us with pre-packaged meanings and purposes, ready-made answers to the existential questions that plague us. These might include pursuing a specific career path, accumulating wealth, achieving social status, or adhering to certain religious or cultural norms. These external validations provide temporary relief from the anxiety of meaninglessness, but they ultimately fail to satisfy our deepest longings. This lie, is the acceptance of these external meanings without questioning them, adopting societal expectations as our own without considering whether they align with our true selves. We internalize these messages, often unconsciously, and begin to believe that our worth is contingent upon achieving these external goals. This can lead to a profound disconnect from our authentic selves, a sense of living a life that's not truly our own. We might find ourselves pursuing a career that promises financial security but leaves us feeling empty and unfulfilled, or striving for a level of social status that brings only fleeting moments of satisfaction. For example, consider the societal pressure to pursue a high-paying, prestigious career, such as a doctor, lawyer, or investment banker. Many individuals dedicate years of their lives to achieving these goals, sacrificing their passions, their relationships, and their well-being in the process. They might achieve societal success, earning a high income, gaining recognition from their peers, and enjoying a certain level of material comfort but still feel profoundly unfulfilled. They may realize that they were pursuing these goals not because they genuinely desired them, but because society told them they should. Think of celebrities who seemingly have it all, yet struggle with depression and substance abuse. Their external success is not an antidote to the absurd, and the societal lie has left them empty. The lie isn't necessarily malicious. It's not a deliberate attempt to deceive us. Instead, it's a product of social conditioning, the result of generations of individuals passing down their beliefs and expectations to their children. The modern pursuit of happiness is often built on shaky foundations, fueled by consumerism, social media, and the relentless pressure to keep up with the Joneses. Are you pursuing goals because you truly want them, or because society tells you they should? The inherent conflict between individual desires and societal pressures can lead to a life of quiet desperation, a sense of being trapped in a gilded cage. So, how does knowing about the absurd and the lie help us, and how can we avoid being Sisyphus? Recognition is the starting point, so stay with me. Now that we know about the absurd and the lie, how does that knowledge actually help us, and how can we avoid being Sisyphus? The first step to living authentically is recognizing the absurd nature of existence and the lie of societal expectations. This recognition isn't a passive acceptance of meaninglessness, but an active, conscious confrontation with the inherent uncertainty of life. It involves embracing the unknown, questioning assumptions, and rejecting the need for external validation. Recognizing the absurd requires a deep dive into self-reflection. Start by examining your beliefs, your values, and your goals. Ask yourself why you believe what you believe, why you value what you value, and why you're pursuing the goals you're pursuing. Are these beliefs, values, and goals truly your own, or have they been imposed upon you by society, your family, or your culture? Identify areas where you're conforming to external pressures rather than following your own desires. Are you staying in a job because it's stable and respectable, even though it makes you miserable? Are you pursuing a relationship because you feel like you should be settling down, even though you're not genuinely happy with the person you're with? For example, let's say you've always believed that success means climbing the corporate ladder and earning a six-figure salary. But when you take a closer look, you realize that this belief was instilled in you by your parents, who valued financial security above all else. You start to question whether this definition of success truly resonates with you. Maybe you discover that you're more passionate about creative pursuits, such as writing, painting, or music. Perhaps you realize that you value freedom and flexibility more than financial security. By questioning this deeply held belief, you begin to recognize the disconnect between your true desires and the expectations that have been placed upon you. Recognizing the absurd can be uncomfortable, even painful. It challenges deeply held beliefs, forces us to confront our own mortality, and shatters the illusion of control. It's not a one-time event, but a continuous process of questioning, reflecting, and re-evaluating our lives. Just as Camus grappled with the absurd throughout his life, so too must we continually confront the inherent uncertainty of existence. This path is not easy, but it is the only path toward authenticity and freedom. Now that we know that there is no inherent meaning to life, how can we use this in our favor? The idea of creating your own values and living passionately is about to be unleashed. Now that we know there is no inherent meaning to life, how can we use this to our advantage? Embracing the absurd doesn't lead to despair, but to freedom. The lack of inherent meaning allows individuals to create their own values and purposes, unburdened by societal expectations or external pressures. This is where the true power of absurdism lies, in the recognition that we are free to define our own existence. Creating your own values means choosing what matters to you, based on your own experiences, desires, and beliefs. It means identifying what gives your life meaning and purpose, regardless of what anyone else thinks. This requires a shift in focus from external validation to intrinsic motivation, from seeking approval from others to seeking fulfillment within yourself. It means aligning your actions with your values, living in accordance with your own personal code of ethics, and pursuing goals that are meaningful and fulfilling to you, even if they don't make sense to anyone else. Think about artists who pursued their creative visions despite facing rejection and criticism. Vincent van Gogh, for example, sold only one painting during his lifetime, yet he continued to paint with unwavering passion, driven by his own internal vision. Or consider activists who fought for social justice, even in the face of oppression and violence. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison for his beliefs, yet he never wavered in his commitment to equality and freedom. These individuals found fulfillment in their chosen pursuits, not because they received external recognition or reward, but because they were living in accordance with their own values, contributing to something larger than themselves. They are examples of the absurd hero, individuals who embrace the absurd and live passionately, even in the face of meaninglessness. This freedom is both exhilarating and terrifying. It places the responsibility for creating meaning squarely on our own shoulders. We can no longer rely on society, religion, or any other external authority to tell us what to do or how to live. We are now the sole architects of our own lives, free to choose our own values, pursue our own passions, and create our own purposes. It is your responsibility to create your own life. With that, the key takeaways from this section are about to be summarized as we hint at the next steps. Rebelling against the absurd and living passionately is about to be discussed, as well as how to become an absurd hero, so stay tuned. But that's not all there is to it. Creating your own values is only the first step. To truly embrace absurdism, you must connect this to rebelling against the absurd itself. But rebellion, in Camus's view, isn't about violent revolution or overthrowing governments. Think of it instead as a constant questioning and rejection of imposed meaning. It's a daily, conscious choice to stand against the tide of societal expectations and to carve your own path. Isn't it interesting that we are taught to follow the rules, but the truth is we should be questioning them? This rebellion is what Camus termed metaphysical rebellion. What does this mean? It's not simply disagreeing with your parents or breaking the law. Metaphysical rebellion goes much deeper. It involves rejecting the temptation of philosophical suicide, the leap of faith into religion or ideology, and refusing to succumb to despair and nihilism. It's a conscious choice to live without illusions, fully aware of the absurd, but with passion and defiance. So in essence, metaphysical rebellion is a constant, ongoing attitude towards life, a refusal to be defined by anything other than your own choices. Consider Prometheus, the Greek titan who defied the gods by stealing fire and giving it to humanity. His act wasn't just about providing a practical tool. It was a rebellion against divine authority, a refusal to accept the limitations imposed upon humanity. Or think of existentialist artists and writers like Franz Kafka, who challenged societal norms through their work. Kafka created absurdist worlds in his novels, displaying individuals who constantly question authority, are isolated, and feel alienated. Those who rebel exemplify this principle by questioning the meaning of life, instead of taking what is given to them. This rebellion is, at its heart, a deeply personal choice. It's about taking responsibility for your own existence and refusing to be defined by external forces. You may be thinking that it is intimidating to go against the grain, but that is the point. Do you want to live your life for yourself or for other people? Understand that this isn't a call to nihilism or destructive behavior, but a call to authentic living, a life where you're in control. Take some time to reflect on areas in your own life where you can challenge imposed meaning and embrace your freedom to define your own path. Remember that lie we discussed earlier, that societal expectation for creating a happy and successful life. What actions can you take today to make sure you are not living a lie? But here's the twist. How do we balance rebellion with the very human need for connection and meaning in our lives? How do we avoid becoming isolated or self-destructive in our rebellion? This leads us to an equally important aspect of absurdism, passion and engagement. So now that we know the importance of rebelling against imposed meaning, let's talk about passion and engagement. Camus argued that simply recognizing the absurd and rebelling against it isn't enough. Think of it as a car. It needs an engine to run and get to its destination. Camus argued that one must also embrace life with passion and wholehearted engagement, filling the void of absurdism. But what does that truly mean? Living passionately in the face of the absurd means embracing the present moment, finding joy in simple pleasures, and pursuing meaningful activities, even without a guarantee of ultimate success or significance. It's about throwing yourself into life, savoring every experience and finding meaning in the process, not just the outcome. It involves embracing the sensory experience, the taste of food, the warmth of the sun, the beauty of nature, but also the full range of human emotions, the joy, the sorrow, the love, the loss. But isn't it true that following your passion can sometimes lead to suffering? Of course, but that suffering is a part of the human experience, not a reason to withdraw from life. Consider artists who poured their hearts and souls into their work, like Frida Kahlo. Kahlo transformed her physical and emotional pain into powerful self-portraits, using her art to explore themes of identity, the human body, and death. Or think about athletes who dedicated their lives to their sport, pushing their bodies to the limit, like Michael Jordan, who relentlessly pursued excellence, even in the face of countless setbacks. They found fulfillment in their dedication and engagement, not because they achieved fame or fortune, but because they were living passionately, pushing themselves to be the best versions of themselves. These are some of the heroes that embody the absurd view of life. Passion and engagement aren't about escaping the absurd, but about embracing it. It's about finding meaning in the process, not the outcome. It's about living fully, authentically, and passionately, even in a world without inherent purpose. You might be thinking, I don't have any passions. But what if you are not looking hard enough? What if that passion has been buried deep within you? Take a moment to identify your own passions and to explore ways to integrate them more fully into your life. Focus on the present moment and to find joy in the simple things. Remember Sisyphus. Camus suggests that Sisyphus can find joy in the act of pushing the boulder, even if the task is ultimately pointless. It is up to the viewer to find that joy. If rebellion, freedom, and passion are the keys, how can we put these into practice and become absurd heroes? This leads us to our final and most rewarding point. If rebellion, freedom, and passion are the individual brushstrokes, then the absurd hero is the complete painting. The absurd hero embodies all three, living authentically in the face of the absurd. So what makes a hero absurd, and how can you strive to be like that? Is it really even possible? The absurd hero is aware of the absurd nature of existence, but they don't succumb to despair or nihilism. They reject imposed meaning, embracing their freedom to create their own values and purposes. They live passionately, throwing themselves into life with wholehearted engagement, without seeking external validation or guarantees of success. The absurd hero isn't a perfect being, immune to suffering or doubt. They embrace the human condition with all its contradictions and limitations. They accept fate, but aren't controlled by it. How does one do all of that at the same time? The truth is that this is a constant process of becoming. Consider the life of Albert Camus himself. He lived through 2 world wars, witnessing firsthand the horrors of human violence and the absurdity of political ideologies. Despite these experiences, he remained committed to fighting for justice and human rights, using his writing to explore the complexities of the human condition and to advocate for a more humane world. Camus committed to living a life of passion without needing external validation. He is not just the creator of absurdism, but he is an absurd hero. Becoming an absurd hero isn't about achieving greatness or recognition, but about living authentically and embracing the human condition. It's about finding meaning in your own actions and experiences, regardless of external circumstances. Remember that everyone can live authentically, and this is not a state only reserved for a select few. So as you go on your journey, ask yourself, what kind of hero will you be? We've explored the depths of absurdism and the societal lie. So let's quickly recap the key takeaways before we conclude. We started with the question of whether your life is a lie, and as we now know, the lie is accepting imposed meaning without question, not realizing that we can create our own meaning, rebel against the absurd, and passionately live our lives as an absurd hero. As we head into the conclusion, the most profound part is about to be revealed. Now, if rebellion, freedom, and passion are the individual brushstrokes that form the absurd hero, how do we, as imperfect beings, actually put these into practice? The truth is, embracing limitations is a crucial first step, for the absurd hero doesn't deny the constraints of human existence, but accepts and even embraces them as part of what makes life worth living. But what does it really mean to embrace limitations, and how can that lead to a more fulfilling existence? Embracing limitations involves acknowledging your own imperfections, accepting the finite nature of life, and focusing on what is within your control. What does that mean in practice? It means understanding that you won't be perfect, you will make mistakes, and you will not achieve every goal you set for yourself. It also means recognizing that your time on this earth is limited, and you should appreciate what you have right now, instead of focusing on the past or the future. Accepting these limitations isn't about resignation, about giving up. Instead, it's about finding freedom within constraints, about choosing to act within a defined space. By understanding our boundaries, we can more effectively act within them. We must understand that, like an underfunded painter who creates masterpieces with limited materials, we too can embrace limitations and craft our own masterpieces of life. Consider the example of Stephen Hawking, who, despite being diagnosed with ALS at a young age, went on to become one of the most brilliant physicists of our time. He didn't deny his physical limitations, but rather embraced them, focusing his energy on theoretical physics, a field where his mind could soar without physical constraints. He used a wheelchair, a speech synthesizer, but he never let these limitations define him. He continued his research, wrote books, and lectured around the world. Hawking's limitations helped him focus and pushed him to excel in his chosen field. Or take Frida Kahlo, whom we've mentioned before, who channeled her physical pain and emotional suffering into powerful self-portraits, using art as a means of self-expression and defiance. She didn't let her physical limitations prevent her from becoming one of the most celebrated artists of the 20th century. These are some of the best examples of how embracing limitations can lead to a more authentic and fulfilling life, despite the obstacles one faces. This embracing of limitations allows for a more realistic and, paradoxically, a more fulfilling approach to life. How so? It frees you from the pursuit of unattainable ideals. By accepting your imperfections, you can focus on progress rather than perfection. Embracing limitations allows for a greater appreciation of the present moment. It helps you focus on what you have, rather than what you lack. Think back to the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus can find joy in the act of pushing the boulder because he accepts the limitations of his task. He knows the boulder will roll back down, but he continues to push it anyway. It is that conscious decision that allows him to find some sense of freedom. What are some limitations in your own life? How can you embrace them as sources of strength and freedom? Think of these limitations not as chains, but as boundaries that define your playground. The choice is yours. But here's the twist. How do we handle the feelings of despair and meaninglessness that can arise when confronting the absurd? How do we avoid succumbing to nihilism when we realize that life has no inherent purpose? This leads us to the next important aspect of absurdism, finding joy in the present moment. Confronting the absurd can, without a doubt, lead to feelings of despair and meaninglessness. After all, if nothing truly matters, what's the point of anything? Camus argued that these feelings are not only a natural part of the human experience, but that they can be overcome, not through some grand philosophical revelation, but by finding joy in the present moment. But what does it mean to find joy in the present moment, especially when the world is full of suffering and injustice? Finding joy in the present moment involves focusing on sensory experiences, cultivating gratitude, and appreciating the simple things in life. It's about savoring a cup of coffee, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, listening to your favorite music, or spending time with loved ones. It's not about ignoring the problems of the world, but about finding moments of peace and joy amidst the chaos. You might be thinking, but isn't that just escapism? The key here is to embrace the joy without ignoring the absurd. Understand that, even within a meaningless world, moments of joy can have value. Consider Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor who found solace and meaning in the present moment despite the horrors of Auschwitz. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl wrote about finding beauty in nature, connecting with fellow prisoners, and imagining a future where he could share his experiences. He cultivated a sense of gratitude for the small things that kept him going. He understood that, even in the face of immense suffering, moments of joy and connection were possible. Or think of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk and peace activist, who teaches the importance of mindfulness and appreciating the present moment. He emphasizes that even simple acts like breathing or washing dishes can be opportunities for joy and connection. Even in the most difficult situations, these individuals chose to focus on finding joy, which ultimately gave them the strength to carry on. Finding joy in the present moment is a conscious choice. You might even think of it as a muscle that can be exercised. It's about intentionally shifting your focus from the future to the present, from what is lacking to what is present. This relates back to the absurd hero, who finds meaning not in some grand future goal, but in the daily act of living. You can choose to cultivate a sense of gratitude, to savor sensory experiences, and to connect with others in meaningful ways. What are some small things that bring you joy? Commit to practicing gratitude on a daily basis. Savor that morning cup of coffee. Take a walk in nature. Listen to your favorite song. These small acts of joy can be powerful antidotes to despair. But here's the rub. How do we connect our individual values and passions to a larger purpose, even if the universe is indifferent? How do we reconcile our desire for meaning with the reality of an absurd existence? This leads us to the final piece of the puzzle: connection and revolt. While absurdism emphasizes individual freedom and responsibility, it also recognizes the importance of connection and solidarity. We are, after all, social creatures, and our lives are intertwined with others. Camus recognized that we are all in this absurd situation together, facing the same existential challenges. But how do we find meaning and purpose in a world without inherent meaning? And how do we connect with others in a way that transcends the absurd? Connecting to something larger involves finding common ground with others, contributing to a cause greater than oneself, and recognizing the shared human experience. We can connect through shared values, shared goals, or even shared struggles. This is not about finding a universal meaning, but about creating meaning through collective action. It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences for others, and that we can make a difference, even in a meaningless world. Connecting to something larger, in essence, is taking the focus away from yourself and putting it on other people and situations. Consider the civil rights movement in the United States. Individuals like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks found meaning through their commitment to social justice and equality. They were not alone in their revolt. They connected with others who shared their values and their goals, and together they fought for a more just and equitable society. Or think of environmental activists who are working to protect our planet for future generations. These activists are driven by a sense of responsibility to something larger than themselves. They understand that our actions have consequences for the environment, and they are committed to creating a more sustainable world. Connecting to something larger can provide a sense of purpose and meaning that transcends the individual. But why? Because it's about recognizing that we are all interconnected, that our actions have consequences for others. It is through this idea that our small lives can have large ripples. This relates back to the absurd hero, who finds meaning not only in their own passions, but also in their contributions to the world. So what is a cause that you care about? In what ways can you get involved in something that is bigger than yourself? Perhaps it is environmentalism, or community activism, or even just helping a neighbor. Find something that you can dedicate your time and energy towards, and connect with others who share your values. So, what do we learn from this exploration of absurdism? What are the key takeaways that we can apply to our own lives? Let's quickly recap the key concepts we've explored: recognizing the absurd, creating your own values, embracing limitations, finding joy in the present moment, and connecting to something larger. But there is one more final point to all of this. Absurdism, as we now understand, is not a philosophy of despair, but a philosophy of freedom. It's about liberating yourself from the need for external validation and embracing the inherent uncertainty of life. You might be thinking that living authentically can be scary, but embracing the unknown can be freeing. You can choose to live in accordance with your own values, to pursue your own passions, and to connect with others in meaningful ways, even without a guarantee of ultimate success or significance. But what does that mean? We are all free to make our own choices, but with freedom comes responsibility. It is our duty to act authentically, to live in accordance with our values, and to contribute to the world in a way that feels meaningful to us. You may be reminded of the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is not a tragic figure, but an absurd hero. While he is aware of his fate, he rebels against it by embracing the task. He finds a sense of freedom and purpose in his own actions. The myth of Sisyphus is the perfect image of the absurd hero, embracing meaninglessness and finding meaning in the process. The lie, as we now know, is the illusion of inherent meaning. The truth is that we are free to create our own meaning. And isn't that a beautiful truth? The absurd hero is someone who embraces this truth and lives authentically. You too can embrace your own absurd heroism by committing to live in accordance with your own values and passions. Live in the present, embrace freedom and rebel against imposed meaning. And with that, we now head toward the conclusion. But remember, the path to an authentic life is not about finding answers, but about embracing the questions. We'll be summing things up in the outro, so stay with me. If we have now accepted that there is no meaning to any of this, and yet we are still breathing, why should we do anything at all? Why bother getting out of bed? Why strive to be a better person? Why pursue any goal if in the end it all amounts to nothing? This is, without a doubt, one of the most common objections to absurdism, the concern that it leads to nihilism, the belief that life is utterly without value. But here's the twist. Absurdism doesn't negate the value of action. It reframes it. Absurdism shifts the focus from external justification to intrinsic motivation. What does that mean? It means that instead of doing something to achieve a particular outcome, we do it because the act itself is inherently meaningful. The distinction is vital. Are you pursuing a career solely for the promise of wealth and status, or because you genuinely find the work engaging and fulfilling? Are you being kind to others because you expect a reward, or because you believe in the inherent value of compassion? When we focus on external rewards, we become dependent on factors outside of our control. When we focus on intrinsic rewards, we find a source of purpose and fulfillment that cannot be taken away. Consider the work of a dedicated artist who toils away in obscurity, creating masterpieces that may never be seen by a wide audience. Or think of the volunteer who tirelessly serves their community without seeking recognition or praise. Or the dedicated hobbyist who perfects a skill, not for profit, but for the sheer love of the craft. These individuals are not driven by the promise of external validation, but by the inherent satisfaction they find in their activities. A teacher who loves teaching, even if they are never recognized or make a lot of money, is doing something intrinsically meaningful. This focus on the process rather than the result is the core of absurdism. Choosing intrinsically motivated activities can create a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment, even in the face of the absurd. So, how can we apply this to our own lives? Start by identifying activities that bring you joy, that make you feel alive and engaged. Question your motivations for doing things. Are you pursuing goals because you genuinely believe in them, or because you feel pressured by societal expectations? Shift your focus to intrinsic rewards, finding satisfaction in the process itself, rather than the outcome. This, however, can lead to another problem. If we are acting without any promise of something, how do we maintain this action? Now we need to explore discipline and commitment. The question then becomes, why should we even be disciplined? In a world without inherent meaning, what motivates us to persevere, to stay committed to our values and passions when faced with setbacks, boredom, or the temptation to give up? The answer, perhaps surprisingly, lies in the embrace of discipline and commitment, not as rigid adherence to external rules, but as a conscious act of rebellion against the absurd. Discipline and commitment, within the context of absurdism, aren't about blindly following orders or fulfilling obligations. Instead, they are about making a conscious, deliberate choice to pursue your values and passions, even when it's difficult. It's about recognizing the inherent meaninglessness of existence and choosing, in spite of that, to create your own meaning through sustained effort and dedication. Discipline becomes a form of self-expression, a way of asserting your will against the indifferent universe. It is about finding your own meaning in every action, no matter how small. Think of the artist who faces constant rejection, yet continues to paint. Think of the scientist who tirelessly pursues a breakthrough despite years of failed experiments. Or consider the activist who fights for social justice, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. These individuals are not driven by the promise of success, but by a deep commitment to their values and a refusal to surrender to the absurd. The jazz musician Charlie Parker, despite struggling with addiction and facing constant discrimination, remained committed to his art. He practiced relentlessly, pushing the boundaries of music and creating a unique style that continues to inspire generations. It was through discipline that Charlie Parker created an authentic life. Discipline and commitment are essential tools for creating a meaningful life in the face of the absurd. So, how can we cultivate these qualities in our own lives? Start by identifying your core values and passions. What do you care about deeply? What activities make you feel most alive? Set realistic goals that align with your values and passions. Break these goals into smaller, manageable steps. Develop a daily routine that incorporates these steps, even when you don't feel like it. Embrace discipline as a form of rebellion, a way of asserting your will against the chaos of existence. But what if that wasn't enough? This brings us to the most important part of absurdism, something that will change your life forever. It's an idea that is so empowering, so terrifying that many people shy away from it. Let's talk about freedom. We have explored discipline, action, and passion, but the truth is that the glue that holds all of these together is freedom. The core of absurdism is the radical freedom it offers. The absence of inherent meaning places the full burden of responsibility squarely on the individual's shoulders. We are free to define our own values, to create our own purpose, to live our lives as we see fit. This freedom, however, is both a gift and a burden. It's a gift because it liberates us from the constraints of external expectations and allows us to forge our own path. It's a burden because it forces us to confront the weight of our choices, the responsibility for creating our own meaning in a world without inherent purpose. Consider the life of Simone de Beauvoir, the existentialist philosopher and feminist writer. She rejected traditional societal expectations for women, choosing instead to pursue her own intellectual and personal passions. She refused to marry, choosing instead a lifelong partnership with Jean-Paul Sartre based on mutual respect and intellectual stimulation. She dedicated her life to writing, exploring themes of existentialism, feminism, and social justice. De Beauvoir embraced her freedom and took responsibility for her choices, even in the face of criticism and opposition. Or you might think of someone like Elon Musk, who made his own choices against the grain. Now, you may not agree with his choices, but they are his. Embracing freedom and taking responsibility for your choices can be daunting, but it is also liberating. So, how can we embrace this freedom in our own lives? Start by identifying areas where you are giving your power away to external forces. Are you living your life according to someone else's expectations? Are you letting fear or insecurity dictate your choices? Reclaim your autonomy by making conscious decisions based on your own values and desires. Accept the consequences of your choices, both good and bad. Own your life with everything that comes with it. This, of course, can lead to another question. We now know that we must act with freedom and discipline, but there is still one question. How do we make these choices? How do we know what is the right decision? How do we navigate the complex ethical dilemmas that arise in a world without inherent moral guidelines? This is the challenge of moral ambiguity, and it is a critical question for anyone seeking to live an absurdist life. Absurdism doesn't lead to moral relativism, the belief that there are no objective moral truths. Instead, it leads to a heightened sense of moral responsibility. Since there are no external authorities to dictate our actions, we must rely on our own internal compass, guided by empathy, compassion, and a commitment to justice. These values are not inherent in the universe, but they are values we choose to embrace, values that give our lives meaning and purpose. This is where the nuance happens. It's not about doing what you want, but doing what is right, even when it goes against your own desires. Consider the actions of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison for fighting against apartheid in South Africa. Despite suffering immense personal hardship, Mandela emerged from prison with a commitment to reconciliation and forgiveness. He chose to lead his country towards a more just and equitable future, even in the face of deep-seated hatred and division. Or think of the many unsung heroes who dedicate their lives to helping others, providing aid to the poor, advocating for the marginalized, and fighting against injustice. These individuals are not driven by the promise of reward, but by a deep sense of compassion and a commitment to making the world a better place. Making ethical decisions in the face of the absurd requires careful consideration, empathy, and a willingness to challenge one's own assumptions. So, how can we apply these principles to our daily lives? Start by reflecting on your own values. What do you believe is right and wrong? How do you treat others? Are you acting with compassion and empathy? Challenge your own assumptions. Are you open to different perspectives? Are you willing to question your own beliefs? Commit to justice. What can you do to make the world a more just and equitable place? Now, the final question. How do we take all of this and make it a framework for life? How do we act in alignment with absurdism? And what does this action look like? What are the practical steps we can take to construct our own absurdist framework? A framework that allows us to live authentically, find meaning in the face of meaninglessness, and embrace the freedom and responsibility that comes with being human. Absurdism is not a rigid set of rules to follow, but rather a flexible framework for thinking about life and making choices. It's a way of approaching the world with open eyes, acknowledging the inherent uncertainty and meaninglessness of existence, and choosing to create your own meaning through conscious action and commitment. This is what it all comes down to, what it means to live an absurdist life. Understand that you are your own God, and you are in charge of your own life. Remember the absurd hero we discussed earlier. Revisit the example of Sisyphus, who, despite being condemned to an eternity of pushing a boulder uphill, finds joy and meaning in the task itself. Or Frida Kahlo, who turned her pain and suffering into powerful art. They both embody the principles of absurdism, living authentically, embracing limitations, finding joy in the present, connecting to something larger than themselves, and rebelling against the absurd. They are not gods, they are human. Their imperfections and struggles make them relatable. By showing the fallible side of the absurd hero, we create a connection with the viewer, making them more likely to embrace the philosophy themselves. Creating your own absurd framework is a lifelong process, an ongoing journey of self-discovery and meaning-making. So, how can you get started? Begin by recognizing the absurd. Acknowledge the inherent uncertainty and meaninglessness of existence. Define your values. What do you care about deeply? What principles will guide your actions? Embrace limitations. Accept your imperfections and focus on what you can control. Find joy in the present. Appreciate the small things in life and cultivate a sense of gratitude. Commit to what you love. Pursue your passions with discipline and dedication. Take responsibility. Own your choices and accept the consequences. Navigate with compassion. Treat others with kindness and empathy. Then do it all with great freedom. But there is still the question of what is next. The next section will summarize the key takeaways from this body section, foreshadowing the conclusion. Embracing the absurd is not about finding easy answers, but about asking better questions. Questions that challenge our assumptions and lead us towards a more authentic and meaningful existence. This is what absurdism can do for the viewer. As we reach the culmination of our exploration into the absurd, let us pause and reflect on the journey we have undertaken together. We have grappled with challenging ideas, questioned fundamental assumptions, and confronted the inherent meaninglessness of existence. So, after this deep dive into absurdism, what does it all mean for your life? In essence, we've discovered that the freedom and meaning we seek are not to be found in some external source, but rather within ourselves. You now possess the framework to challenge preset societal norms, to define your own values, and to create a life that is authentic and fulfilling, independent of external validation. The power to construct your own meaning has been in your hands all along. Absurdism simply provides the lens through which you can finally see it. Remember the initial question we posed. Are you living a lie, chasing after goals and expectations that are not truly your own? Consider again the image of Sisyphus, eternally pushing his boulder uphill. Can one truly be happy embracing the absurd, and how can it be implemented in your daily life? The answer lies in the realization that the lie is not a malicious deception imposed upon us, but rather the often unconscious pursuit of external validation, the belief that meaning can be found in achieving certain milestones or conforming to societal expectations. The most profound insight of all is that freedom arises from recognizing the lack of inherent meaning. It is in this void that we find the space to create our own values, to define our own purpose, and to live our lives with intention and passion. The synthesis of rebellion, freedom, and passion, as exemplified by the absurd hero, is the key to unlocking a life of authenticity and meaning in a world without guarantees. It is in rebelling against the status quo, being free in your own mind, and acting with passion that you can create a life of your own. This journey through absurdism speaks to the universal human search for meaning and purpose, a quest that has occupied philosophers, theologians, and individuals for centuries. How can embracing absurdity lead to a more compassionate and understanding world? By recognizing the inherent limitations of human knowledge and the subjectivity of individual experience, we can cultivate empathy and tolerance for others, even those whose values and beliefs differ from our own. In a world grappling with a meaning crisis, where traditional sources of meaning are eroding and individuals feel increasingly disconnected and adrift, the insights of absurdism offer a powerful antidote, a path towards authenticity and connection in a digital age. You are not alone in this pursuit of meaning and self-discovery. You have the power to choose your values, to embrace your limitations, and to create a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling, even in the face of the absurd. There is hope in understanding that you are not shackled to society's expectations, and that you are free to create the life that matters to you. Remember that your journey is unique, and that the answers you seek are to be found not in external doctrines, but in the depths of your own being. So, I challenge you to reflect on your own values, passions, and limitations, starting today. Identify one area in your life where you can embrace the absurd and live more authentically, where you can rebel against expectations and define your own path. The meaning of life isn't a destination, but the questions that you ask along the way, so enjoy the journey, because there isn't a destination.